To make this gorgeous Easter rabbit, you will need some stuffing, you will need some scissors, some safety eyes, you will need a crochet hook. I'm using a 4.5. The yarn does recommend a 6, but I found it a bit holey, so I'm using a 4.5. And you will need whatever yarn you would like to use. I'm using Baby Blossom Chunky in Buttercup, and for the egg and the feet I'm using Baby Blossom in Pretty Primrose, and a darning needle. Right, so we're going to start with the legs. I'm only going to make one, but you will need to make two. I've already made the second one. Look, it's here. Beautiful. But to start with, we're going to start with a different colour that goes on the bottom here, and then we'll go to our main colour for this bit. Okay. Right, to make a magic ring, you're going to lay the yarn over your fingers like this. Then you're going to cross over, make a cross, put your yarn under the first, over the second, pull, twist, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through, and that is your magic ring. And then we are going to do 6 single crochets into the magic ring. So to do a single, you just literally poke, pull, yarn over, pull through both. 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 So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. So we need 2 more. 5 and 5 and 6. And I'm working in continuous rounds. So we're just going to do the next row on top of the ones we've already got. Give it a nice little tighten. And then the next row is an increase. So an increase is 2 singles in the same stitch. Okay, so we've got an increase. So 1 and 2. That's our first increase. Now we need another increase. So that's 1 and 2. And then we are going to do a single crochet in the next stitch. A single crochet is the poke, pull, yarn over, pull through 2. And then in the next stitch, we're going to do an increase again. So we're going to put 2 in there. And then in the next stitch, it's another increase. So that's 2 in the same one. And then to end, we have got 1 final single crochet. And that is the end of round 2. So next we've got round 3. And this time I'm actually going to use a stitch marker to mark the beginning of the round, okay? So this round we've got 4 increases, then a single crochet, then 4 increases, and then a single crochet. But I'm going to do it with you. So our first increase goes in here. So that's 1, 2. But like I said, I'm going to put stitch marker in now. So that's my second stitch, that's my first of the round. So it's going to go in that one. And I need to do 3 more increases. So 1 and 2. 3. 4. And then we've got a single crochet. So just 1 on its own in the next stitch. We've got 4 increases. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. And then in the last stitch, we've actually got a single crochet. We're going to start it and we're going to yarn over and pull it through, but we're not going to finish it because we're actually going to change colour now. Okay, so we're going to snip our yarn here. Doesn't have to be particularly long. We're not sewing it in or anything. That's the end of that for now, and now we're going to start with the main colour. So this is my buttercup that I'm using, and now to finish this stitch off, I'm literally going to loop that over there and pull it through the stitch, and that is my last single of round 3. Okay, so now we're on round 4. And what we want to do is we want to carry this over and crochet over the top of it to hide it. So round 4, we're just doing in the back loop only. So this is the front loop and this one here is the back loop. So we're going to go in between like that. And we are going to do a single crochet in that one. And I'm going to put my stitch marker in so we don't forget where we are. And then in the next stitch, we're going to do an increase. So again, that's in the back loop. It's all in the back loop. Again, that's just two single crochet, sorry, in the same stitch. That's our increase. And it's the same for the whole of the round. So it's a single followed by an increase, single followed by an increase, okay? And we're at the last increase of the round. And that's all in the back loop. And if you've done it all in the back loop, you should have these nice little lines on top of your work. There we go. Right, next is, so for the next 3 rounds, it's just 27 singles all the way, okay? So let's start. We're going to put a stitch marker in there. I'm going to count this round to make sure I've got 27. So that's 1, 2, 26 and 27. Now the next 2 rounds are exactly the same, so I will see you when we get to the end of round 7. Right, now we're coming to the end of round 7, so you should have just done 3 straight rows of 27 singles. That's the end of round 7. Doesn't it look beautiful? And now what we're going to do is some decreases. So we are going to do 7 decreases. Now I'm going to show you what that means. So to do a decrease, okay, you go up the front loop of the stitch, so just that one, and you do it on the 2 stitches. So that's 1, 2, and then you go through and you just finish like a normal single crochet, and that is a decrease. And I will show you that again. So that's my first decrease, and we need 7. So go up the front of the first stitch, up the front of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So that's 2. So up the front of the first, up the front of the second, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through, and that is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's our 7 decreases. It makes it look a little bit more like a shoe. And then what we need to do is 13 single crochets, okay? So that bit is part of the decrease, so we go into this one. So we've got 13 singles, okay? 1, 12 and 13. And that is the end of round 8. So now we're on round 9. So I'm going to remove the stitch marker. I'm going to do 2 single crochets, okay? So it's 1, and 2, and then we have got 1 decrease, okay? So remember, through the front loop of the first stitch, the front loop of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through. So that's a decrease. And then to finish this round, we need to do 16 singles. So 1 and 16, and that is the end of round 9. Now the next round is 2 singles again. So I'm going to remove the stitch marker. I'm going to do my first one, and then I'm going to replace my stitch marker and do my second single. So that's our 2 singles done. Now we've got another decrease here, so we're just going up the front of the first stitch, up the front of the second stitch, then we're going to yarn it, oops, I split the stitch there. We're going to yarn over and pull it through, yarn over and pull through. That's your decrease. And now you've got 15 singles, okay? So 1 and 15, and that's the end of round 10. So now we have got 10 rows of exactly the same, okay? So I'm not gonna make you watch me do the whole 10 rows, but basically it's just a single crochet in every stitch around. So remember to remove your stitch marker, do your first stitch, and then replace your stitch marker. Okay, so I am going to join you when I get to the end of round 20. I'm just going to get to the end of row 20 and then we'll have a closer look. Oops. Right, there we go. So now I'm going to put my stitch marker in the loop that's on the hook just to hold it in place so that we can stuff the leg. Doesn't it look cute? When you stuff it, these bits will come out, so don't worry too much about those right now. Right, let's stuff. You want to stuff it until it's nice and firm, okay? I would go into the foot first, because once you've stuffed the leg, it'll be harder to get it into the foot. And we want to get this rounded off so we don't have any little bits. So I'm going to keep just stuffing into the foot for now. See, it's all rounded now, look. Just stuffing it, just rounds it off. Right, I'm going to stop stuffing there just because I want to get my decreases in and then I can give it a bit more of a stuff. Right, so we're now on round 21 and what we've got is 9 decreases. So remember, a decrease is up the front of the first stitch, up the front of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through, yarn over, pull through both. And then we're going to put a stitch marker so we know where the start of the round is. So that's 1. Another decrease. It's all decreases on this round, okay? So that's 2. And this will be 9. It does get a bit tighter, but it is worth sticking with, I promise. 9. And then I'm going to remove my stitch marker and I'm going to put it in the hook, the loop, sorry, that is on the hook. And then I'm going to stuff my little foot just a little bit more, okay? Until I'm happy with it, because it's not quite firm enough. Right, I do believe that will be firm enough now. So what we need to do next is remove the stitch marker. And then we're going to do 1 single crochet, which will take us into this one here. And then we are going to fold the opening shut like this. Make sure there's no stuffing poking out, because otherwise you're going to crochet the stuffing out. And what we're going to do is single crochet through both sides. And we're going to do 4 single crochets through both sides. So 1, 'and then into the next one. So that's 2, and into the next one. So that's 3. Can be a bit tricky, but just bear with. And then we're going to go actually just round the post really here, but that is 4. And then we're going to fasten off. So we are going to leave ourselves quite a little bit of length just because we're going to sew this leg on. So that will do there. And then we're going to fasten off. And now if you've just finished your first leg, what I would do is go back and do your second leg. And then when you are ready, we can move on. But there's my 2 legs. Now it's time for the arms. So for our arms, we just start in the main colour straight off. We don't need any other colour. The reason you have the other colour is because it just stands out and it shows that it's the bottom of the foot. That's the reason I do the other colour for the feet. But anyway, right, we're going to make a magic ring. You're going to hold the yarn over your fingers like this. Then you're going to twist, turn, make a cross. And you're going to go under the first bit, over the second bit, pull, twist, and then you're going to yarn over and pull through, okay? And then for this, we're just going to do 6 singles into the ring. So 1 and 6, there's our 6 singles. We're going to tighten it, and then we are going to do an increase in every single stitch. So we're going to do our first stitch, and then we're going to put the stitch marker in. So that's one increase done now. So remember, an increase is 2 stitches into the same stitch. That's 2, and then we've got 6. So you should have at the end of this round 12 stitches. Okay, right, and then for the next round, what we're going to do is remove the stitch marker. We're going to do 1 single crochet, replace the stitch marker, and then we're going to do an increase. So remember, 2 stitches in the same one. And then the pattern on this one is single increase, single increase, single increase. Okay, so I'll see you when I get near to the end of the row. So I'm nearly at the end of the row, but I just decided to tell you, make sure you pull your tail to keep that tight. Okay, otherwise it might come undone. Right, so I'm on my last single and then my increase. So single, and then in this one we have got an increase. Now for the next 3 rows, you have got 18 singles in each one. Okay, so it's just going to be 3 straight rows, 18 singles in each one. So that's 1. I'm going to replace my stitch marker in, then I'm going to do 18, change my stitch marker, 18, replace my stitch marker, 18, and I will meet you when we get to the end of the 3 rows. So I'm just coming to the end of round 6, so you should have just done 3 straight rounds with 18 stitches in each, and the next is a decrease round. So that's the end of round 6. I'm going to remove my stitch marker. I'm going to do a single crochet, and then I'm going to replace my stitch marker. And the pattern for this round is single, decrease, single, decrease. So there's my single, and this is my decrease. And we're going to go around the whole round like this. So next will be single, then we've got a decrease again. Right, so I'm just getting to the end of round 7 and I'm finishing it off with a decrease. And then after this round, the next 10 rounds are all exactly the same. Okay, so I'm going to remove my stitch marker, I'm going to do 1 single crochet, and then I'm going to replace my stitch marker, and in each round we're going to have 12 single crochets. Okay, right, so we're coming to the end of that round now, round 17. You should have just done 10 rounds of 12 stitches, and then it will be time to remove the stitch marker, pop it in this loop and stuff the arm. You're not going to stuff the arm too much because you don't want it to be too bulky. So let's remove the stitch marker, let's pop it in here, then we will stuff the arm, and we'll leave a little bit at the top so we can sew it together. Okay, and let's stuff. Right, now I'm not going to stuff it right to the top because what we're going to do is single crochet this together like this. So if we do it right to the top, it's going to be really hard to crochet it together. Okay, so remove your stitch marker, and what we're going to do is fold the opening flat, on which we have, and we need to get 6 single crochets across here, and it's really important that you get 6 because the stitch count is used later on. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then I'm probably just going to do the 6th through the post here like this. 6. There we go. And then what we're going to do is cut the yarn and fasten off. Right, so now what you should have, before you move on, you should have 2 arms and 2 legs. And what we're going to work on next is the ears. So if you haven't got 2 arms, go back, do the next arm, and then rejoin us here. So now we're going to start making the rabbit's ears. Okay, so we're going to make a magic ring. So lay the yarn across your fingers, wrap it around, make a cross, go under the first one, over the second one, pull, twist, yarn over, pull through, and that's your magic ring. And then we're going to do 6 singles into the magic ring. Okay, so 1 and 6. Pull your magic ring tight, and then we're going to do 6 increases. So at the end of this next round you should have 12 stitches. So I'm going to do my first one, then I'm going to pop my stitch marker in, and remember an increase is 2 stitches in the same 2 single crochets in the same stitch. So at the end of this round you should have 12 stitches. Okay, then what we're going to do is remove the stitch marker. We're going to do a single crochet, then we're going to replace the stitch marker, and now the pattern for this round is single increase, single increase, single increase. So I've done my single, now I'm going to do my increase, and then next I'm going to do a single and an increase all the way around. Right, so I'm just on to my last increase on round 3, and the pattern was single increase, single increase. There we go, so that's my last increase. Isn't this beautiful? And then we're going to remove our stitch marker. We're going to do 1 single crochet, and then we're going to replace the stitch marker. And then the pattern for this round is 2 single crochets. So that's our first one. This will be our second one, and then an increase. And it's the same all of the way around, so I will meet you when we get to the other side. Right, so I'm just doing the last increase of round 4. And then the next pattern we're going to do is 3 singles and then an increase, okay? And it's the same all the way around, so I'll meet you when I get to the end of this round. So I'm just coming to the end of that round. So I've just done my 3 singles, and now we're on an increase. And then what we're going to do next is 3 straight rounds of 30. So that's round 6, 7 and 8 are all the same. So we're going to do our first stitch, replace our stitch marker, and then do 30 singles, replace the stitch marker, 30 singles, replace the stitch marker, 30 singles, and I will get back to you when we get to the end of row 8. So I'm just approaching the end of round 8, which is the 3rd round of 30 singles. And then the next row is slightly different, okay? So the first thing we're going to do for the next row is a decrease. So remember, you just pop the hook up the front of the first stitch, up the front of the second stitch, yarn over, pull through. That is your first decrease. And then you're going to do 13 singles. Right, yeah, 13 singles, so 1, and then we've got our 13th. And then the next stitch is going to be a decrease. And then we've got 13 more singles to get to the end of this round. Right, now the next round after this is just 28 singles, okay? So I'm just going to let you get on with that. 28 singles is the next round. So remove your stitch marker, replace it, and I'll meet you when we get to the end of the 28. Right, so I'm almost at the end of the straight round of 28, which is round 10. And then round 11, we start with a decrease again. And then we've got 12 singles, and then another decrease, and then 12 singles. Now we're almost at the end of round 10. No, sorry, 11. Oops. And the next round, round 12, is just 26 single crochets all around. And I'm just getting to the end of round 12, which is just a straight round of 26 single crochets. And then we've got that funny pattern again. So this pattern is a decrease followed by 11 singles, and then another decrease followed by the last 11 singles. Okay, so there's my decrease. Now I'm going to do 11, a decrease, and then another 11, and I'll meet you when we get to the end. And now we're on round 14. So round 14 is a straight round of just 24 single crochets. So I'm just approaching the end of round 14, and then is on to round 15. Now round 15 is a decrease followed by 10 singles, another decrease, and then another 10 singles. So I'm just at the end of round 15. And then round 16 is just a straight row of 22 singles. So I will meet you when we get to the end of round 16. So I'm just at the end of round 16. I've just done 22 single crochets. And now what I'm going to do is remove my stitch marker, and then we're going to do a decrease and then 9 single crochets, another decrease, and then another 9 single crochets. Now we're just approaching the end of round 17. And round 18 is just a straight 20 single crochets, okay? And so we're just at the end of round 18. and round 19 is a decrease followed by 8 singles and then another decrease. So, oh, and then another 8, sorry. So we're just coming to the end of round 19, which should be 18 stitches at the end because you've got your decrease in there. And then we've got a straight round. So round 20 is just 18 single crochets, okay? So we've just come to the end of round 19. So we should have 18 single crochets. And then we're on to a decrease round again. So we have got a decrease followed by 7 singles, another decrease, and then another 7 single crochets and 7. So the next round is just a straight round of 16, and this is round 22. So just 16 singles, and we're just coming to the end of round 22. We should have 16 single crochets in there. Anyway, now we're on another decrease row, and the decrease this time is a decrease and then 6 singles and then another decrease. So I'm just doing my decrease, pop my stitch marker back in, and then the next round is just a straight 14 single crochets. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, then I'm going to do the first single followed by 13 more, and I will meet you when we get to the end of this row. So I'm just at the end of row 24 with my last single, and then we are on to another decrease row. So for this one we are going to do a decrease followed by 5 singles and then another decrease and then another 5 singles. So that's my decrease, and then we've got 1, and then round 26 is just 12 single crochets. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker, pop it back in there. There we go, and that's the end of that round. So next we have got a decrease followed by 4 singles and then another decrease and then 4 singles. So there's my decrease. Now we've got a straight round of 10 single crochets, so I'm going to remove my stitch marker, do my first stitch of this round, so it's just a single crochet, pop it back in, and then I'm going to do 9 more single crochets. And now we are on round 29. So for round 29 what we're going to do is we are going to do a decrease, I'm going to replace the stitch marker, and then we've got 3 single crochets, 1, 2, get out of the way you, 2 and 3. Then we've got another decrease, and then we've got 3 more single crochets. Now we've got just a straight round of 8 singles. So what we're going to do is now is 1 more single, then we're going to fold the ear closed like this, and then we are going to crochet through both sides of the ear, so you will have 4 loops on there, okay? And we need 4 singles, so that's 1, 2, 3, and then the 4th will be more around the post than anything, but it's okay. And then 4 in there. We just need to make sure we've got 4, because otherwise when we attach it to the head the stitch count will not work. And that is the end of that ear. So now you should have 2 ears. If you don't, go back and repeat for this one. You should have 2 legs, 2 arms. So we are going to snip this end off. You don't need it to be long because we're not sewing it on, we're going to crochet it on. Okay, I'm just going to fasten it off and pull that through there, and that is the end of the ear. Right, now for the tail, we're going to make our magic ring. We're going to lay the yarn across our fingers, wrap it around, turn, make a cross, go under the first bit, over the second bit, pull through, twist, yarn over, pull through, and that is your magic ring. Okay, now we're going to do 6 single crochets into the magic ring, so that's 1, 2, tighten it a little bit. 3, 4, 5 and 6. That's the end of your first round, so give the yarn tail a bit of a tighten, and then in here we are going to do an increase. So the first stitch of round 2 for the tail is an increase, so it's 1 and 2, and then we're going to pop a stitch marker into the first stitch. This tail is a little bit fiddly, but it is worth it. Okay, so there's your first increase. You're going to do an increase in every single stitch, so you should end up at the end with 12 stitches. And then we're going to do a straight round of 12 singles now. Okay, so remove the stitch marker, do your first single, and then replace the stitch marker, and then you need 11 more single crochets for this round. Right, so that's your straight round done. Now we're on round 4, which is decrease 6. So we're going to do 6 decreases. Okay, and this is why I say it's a little bit fiddly. So we've got, I'm not going to use my stitch marker, I know it's naughty, but we've got 1, 2, and last one, very fiddly, isn't it? But rabbits need a tail, don't they? So 5 and 6. Then we are going to pop a stitch marker in this loop because we need to stuff it a little bit. Okay, so give that a little tighten, and then we are going to put some stuffing in here. Look at that tiny little tail, isn't it cute? Now what we need to do is fold the edge flat. So we're going to fold it in half, and then we're going to single crochet through both sides, and we need 3 singles through both sides. Okay, so I might have overfilled it ever so slightly, but we'll work it. So that is going to be my first one on this side, and then it needs to go through the stitch on the opposite side, which is that one. So that's a bit loose actually, Gina. So we're going to just give that a bit of a tighten and try again. There you go, that's going to be 1. Still quite loose, but it'll be okay. 1, and then through this one. You'd want to try not to get the stuffing in it if you can help it, okay? And 2. And then we've got our final one, which will go through here, and this makes it, when we fold it in half like this and crochet through it, it means we can crochet it straight onto the body, so there's no sewing. Right, now what we're going to do is cut the yarn and fasten off. And there's your tail. So for the nose, what we're going to do is wrap the yarn around your finger, we're making a magic ring, wrap it around, turn your hand, twist, hold, under, over, pull, twist, yarn over, pull through. There you go, that's our magic ring. If you are really struggling with a magic ring, you could just chain 2 and use your first chain as the magic ring. It works the same, you just really have to just sew in the end really well. So for the first round of the nose, what we're going to do is single crochet 6. So 1, and then we are going to pull the ring closed, and we are going to do 6 increases. So into our first stitch, we're going to do our first increase, and then we're on to the next round. So the next round is a single followed by an increase. So we've got single, and then an increase, and then a single, and then an increase, and then a single, and then an increase. And what you should have by the end is 18 stitches. And finally an increase. And then the next round, so round 4 of the nose, is just a straight round of 18. And we've got 18. And then what we're going to do is leave a long tail for sewing, and we are going to fasten off. And I'm going to slip stitch into there, and then I'm going to pull that through there, and then I'm going to yarn over and pull it right through. now we need to embroider the nose on. Well, I was going to do it in pink, but now I've got pink on there already, so I might do it in yellow just to be completely different, but let me go and get it. So to embroider the detail on the nose, we need a darning needle and we need a yarn with a different colour. Okay, we're going to have a very flowery nose, but that's okay. Now I am going to do the nose probably across the 4 stitches, so I am going to go in here, or actually I might go in there. I'm going to go in there, and I'm going to go all the way. Try to keep this bit out of the way because that's the bit we're going to use to sew, so we don't want to get it tangled up. I'm going to go in this stitch and then I'm going to go down to this stitch, and the nose is just a case of layering it all up. So now I'm going to go into that one, and you just have to keep adding layers for this, okay? And then back into the middle. Then I'm going to go to over here and through the nose, through the hole in the middle, and then through there. Do I think 4 is going to be enough? Well, we'll see, won't we? Right, and then through there. In fact, what I might do is, because I'm just looking at it thinking, is the nose too thin? So I'm actually going to go through that one as well. But now all I'm going to keep doing is just keep layering it all up. So I'm going to fast forward the next bit. Right, so I think I'm happy with that. So as you can see, I've just layered it up. It's a bit of funny nose. I know noses aren't usually this colour, but now what I'm going to do is I'm going to tie, and I wouldn't normally, but it's going to be hidden, so it won't matter. But I'm going to tie these 2 ends together, and then I'm going to poke this bit back out the front, because when we sew it onto the face, I want to tighten it a little bit so that it looks like you've got 2 little cheeks. I will show you what I mean when we get there. So then what we're going to do, we're going to get our needle threaded again. We're going to go back through the centre, just like that. Is not the centre, do you know? Just like, it's quite thick because there's quite a lot in there, but don't worry. I'm going to just go back through the centre like that. And this bit we are going to just leave free, because when we put it onto the face, I'm going to poke it down here, and what it'll do is it'll spread these like cheeks apart. You'll see what I mean. Now we need to start the body. So get the yarn that you want to use for the body and let's go. So we're going to start with a magic ring. So lay the yarn over your hand, wrap it around, make a cross, hold it tight, go under the first bit, over the second bit, pull and twist, yarn over and pull through. There we go, that's our magic ring. Now we're going to do 8 single crochets into the magic ring. So 1, 8. Then we're going to tighten the magic ring, and we are going to do our first stitch into the our first single crochet into the first stitch, but it's actually an increase. So we're going to increase into the first stitch of the round. So that's our 1. Now I'm going to place my stitch marker in. And when we get to the end of this round, we should have 16 single crochets. So that's 2 and 16. Now we're still doing another increase round. So this time we're going to do a single increase all the way round. So it'll just be a single in the first stitch, replace your stitch marker, then an increase. Oops. Then a single increase, single increase, single increase, single increase until you get to the end. And I'm just coming to the end of round 3 where I'm going to do my increase. Now my magic ring has opened up a little bit, so I'm going to pull it tight. What you can do is sew through the magic ring one way and then back through the other way, and it will secure it. So next on our body we are going to do an increase and then 2 single crochets. So our first one is the increase. So that's my increase, so I must put the stitch marker back in the first one. And then I've got 2 single crochets, so 1 and 2. So I'm just coming to the end of round 4 I'm finishing with my 2 singles, and then the next round is 3 single crochets followed by an increase all the way around. So I'll do my first one, pop my stitch marker back in, and we're doing the same pattern all the way around. So 3 singles, then an increase, and I'll meet you at the end of this round. And I'm just coming to the end of round 5 and finishing on an increase. So you should have 40 stitches. Right, now the next round is just a straight round of 40. Okay, so take your stitch marker out, do your stitch, replace it, do your 40 straight single crochets, 40, and that is the end of round 6. Now we are on round 7, and round 7 starts with an increase. So remove your stitch marker, do your increase, and then replace your stitch marker. Make sure you put your stitch marker in the first stitch of the increase, and then the pattern is just an increase, 4 singles, increase, 4 singles until you get round to here. So I'll see you then. And then round 8 and 9 is just 48 straight around. Okay, so you do 48, remove and replace the stitch marker, and then another 48. I've got one more stitch, and then we'll be on to row 10. Now row 10 is a little bit different, not too much different, but a little bit. So to start with, what we're going to do is get your tail. Okay, here's your tail, and what we're going to do is single crochet through both the tail and the body. I'm just going to get rid of this end. I'm going to hide it back in the body. Now we're going to crochet through both the tail and the body. So to do that, what you do, only through 3 stitches. This is why we've got 3 up here, look. We go through the first stitch on the tail, and then we go through the first stitch on the body, which is that one. And that becomes our first stitch of this round. So once we've done it, this is where our stitch marker goes. This is my cheat way, so I don't have to sew so many things on, okay? And then for the next single crochet, we're going to go through the tail again, and then through the next stitch on the body. And we're just going to yarn over and pull through, like so, and then yarn over and pull through. And then you're going to do the next stitch on the tail and the next stitch on the body. And what I tend to do here is this little tail here, I tend to just pop into there, just to get it out of the way. And then that's our 3rd single. And now to finish this round, we just need 45 more singles. Right, so I'm just coming to the end of my round 10. I've got 44, so that's 45 in there. And now the next 5 rounds are exactly the same, okay? So they are just 48 single crochets in the next 5 rounds for every round. So you're going to go 48, 48, 48, 48, 48. So I'm just coming to the end of round 15. I've got my 48 single crochets. That's the 48th. Now we are going to place our stitch markers, getting ready for the arms, and we are also decreasing. Okay, so first off, let's take our stitch marker out, then we're going to pop our stitch marker back in, but let's do 1 single crochet, and then we need to do 11 more. So that's 11 more, 1, 11, and then what we're going to do is place the stitch marker in this stitch. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want our arms to line up. So when we attach our arms, they should be just slightly in front of this stitch marker, and if they're not, then we'll know they're in the wrong place. So once we've done the 12 singles, what we're going to do is 2 singles and then a decrease, and we're going to do that 8 times. Okay, so we're going to go 1, then we're going to place the stitch marker just into the 8th decrease, and then we've got 4 singles to get to the end of this round. So 1, 4. It is good if you have got stitch markers which are slightly thinner, because we're going to leave these in and crochet over the top of them and then take them out afterwards. So if you haven't, then I might, if I was you, swap the stitch marker for a bit of yarn instead. We have a straight round, so round 17 is a straight round of single crochet, so that should be 40 single crochets. So there's our first, and now I'm just at the end of round 17, so that's 40 straight single crochets. And now we're on to round 18. So round 18 is 8 single crochets and then a decrease, and we're going to do that 4 times. The next So for the next 5 rounds, we are going to do 36 straight single crochet. So 36, 36, 36, 36, and then 36. So I'm just at the start of round 24, and we're going to start with 4 single crochets and then a decrease. And we're going to do that 6 times. So 4 singles and then a decrease all the way around. And so I'm just at the end of round 24, just doing my last decrease. And then this is the round where it gets interesting. So we're going to remove our stitch marker, and then in the next round we're going to attach the arms. So what we need to do is 10 single crochets. So I'm going to do my first one and then reattach my stitch marker. So we're going to do 10 singles, and what we want the arm to do when we sew it, when we crochet it in place, we want it to be just in front of this stitch marker. So we need to make sure we've got the right amount of stitches. So 1 and 10. Now I'm just going to do it by eye. That does look like it's going to be roughly in the middle, so that's good. Right, so now what we need to do is get the arm, and we are going to do 6 singles through the arm and the body, okay? That's my foot. I nearly put a foot on instead of an arm. Right, and then what we're going to do, look, is we are going to get our hook and we're going to put it through the first stitch on the arm and then through the next stitch in the body. So that's 1, and then through the next stitch on the arm and then the next stitch on the body. And it's quite easy. Once you've done the first one, it's quite easy just to carry on with the next 5. So that's 2, 3, we should have 6, 4, 5, and then 6 will go in here. I'm just going to pop that bit over there because that can go in the body now, you see. And then we've got our 6. So that's our first arm attached, and if we look, the stitch marker is just slightly behind the arm, which is where I want it. Okay, so once you've done the first arm, you're then going to do 8 single crochets across the rest of the body. So 1 and 8, and then we're going to do 6 singles through the next arm and body. Okay, so this is where we've got the nice flowery one. I always like to do it so that the stitches are facing me. I think it's easier than trying to do it with the stitches behind. You can just see them a bit easier. So first we're going to go through the first stitch in the body, in the arm, sorry, and then through the next stitch in the body, which is that one. So 1. This is where it starts looking more like a cute bunny. 2. And finally we've got 6, and that should take you to the last stitch of the round. So I'm just going to pop that bit of yarn in there so that it can be a bit hidden. Not that bit, that bit. Take the stitch marker out. We're going to do 3 single crochets and then a decrease in this round. Okay, so I'm going to start with my single. So 1, 2, 3, and then the decrease. And then we're going to do this all the way around. So by the time you get back to here, you should have 24 stitches in this round, and I will meet you when we get back to the other side. So I'm just coming to the end of round 26, and I'm just doing my final decrease. And then round 27 is a really easy one. It's just 24 stitches straight round. Okay, so let's pop our stitch marker back in, and then I will meet you when we get to the end of round 27. Right, so I'm just at the end of round 27, and I'm just on my 24th single crochet, and then we're on to round 28. Now round 28 is a decrease round, so it's 2 singles and then a decrease. So 1, then I'm going to replace my stitch marker, and at the end of the round you should have 18 stitches. So 1, then we've got 2 and a decrease, and we're going to do this all the way until we get to the stitch marker, and I will meet you when we get to the stitch marker. And so I'm just at the end of round 28. I'm just doing my final decrease, And then we are going to take the stitch marker out and we're going to place it in the loop that's currently on the hook. Because now what we're going to do is we are going to stuff the body and then we are going to attach some legs. Right, I think that is probably stuffed sufficiently. Maybe a bit too much for now, but never mind. Right, next we are going to attach the legs. So we're going to turn the teddy bear upside down like this. So my tail is at the back, so both my legs need to point forwards. So one can go there, and actually I don't have very much flour on the legs, so I don't need to worry about alternating them, to be honest, but the ears I might. So yeah, the legs we will just sew in a straight line just like that. Maybe if I put a stitch marker in, it might help me a little bit. And I'm going to do the leg I find the hardest first. Right, so I have threaded my needle. Our leg is going to go this way. So I've gone through the body and now I need to go through the leg. Sorry, it's a bit tricky to see, I do know, sorry. So I'm going to go through this stitch on the leg here. I've got to try and keep to that stitch marker there as well, look. Because that's ideally where I'd like it. And then I'm going to go back through the body there. Just straight through to there. Have I gone too far over? Maybe a little bit. Yeah, let's go back to this one because we want as many stitches as we can get in this leg to make sure it's extra secure. And a nice tighten up. And then I'm going to go back through the stitch here, out the other side. And then I'm going to go through this stitch in the body now. And I just go under one stitch post. And then I go back the other way. So I'm going to go through this stitch on the leg. And then I'm going to go through the body again, through that stitch maybe. Yeah, through that stitch. Because my idea with the leg is I like it to move and I like them to be able to sit. I could have done the legs so that they were just, you know, so that Buttercup was just standing, but it's not how I like them. Let's go through there. This is all really just a matter of your own judgment, to be fair. Like what you might like, I might not, and what I might like, you might not. So just sew the leg on any old how. And then I'm going to go through the body and I'm going to weave the tail to just under the rabbit's tail, okay? And I'm just going to pull it out because then I'm going to do the same on the other side and then I'm going to tie these two together, but you'll see. Now both legs are on and we are just going to loosen that one slightly, but then we are going to tie this in a knot. Make sure you've come out of exactly the same hole to do this. Then I'm going to tie this in a knot like so. I'm going to cut my thread Now I've cut my thread, I am going to darn the needle again, and then I'm going to thread this. This is controversial. Some people do not think you should do this, but this is how I do it. I'm going to thread the needle back through and just work along around the body with it, just to get rid of the ends really. But you'll find the way that you want to do it. This is just how I do it. There we go, and then I'm going to snip that off. So we are going to start again on the body. Right, so this round is now an increase round because we're going in to make the head. Okay, so poke your needle in there, your hook in there, sorry, and what we're going to do is 2 single crochets and then an increase. And now I'm really close, so I will sort the camera out in a second, but 2 singles and then an increase. Don't forget to replace your stitch marker. So that's my first single, and then my stitch marker is going back in, and then we've got another single, and then we've got an increase. And this is the pattern the whole way round. So 2 singles and then an increase, 2 singles and then an increase. So I'm just coming to the end of round 29. I'm just going to do my final increase, and then round 30 is another increase round, and this time you're going to do 3 single crochets and then the increase. So remove your stitch marker, do your first single crochet, pop the stitch marker back in, and we're doing 3 singles and then an increase. Okay, so I'm just at the end of round 30. I'm just doing my final increase, and then it'll be on to round 31. Now round 31 again is an increase round, but this time we're going to do 4 single crochets and then the increase. So remove your stitch marker, do your first single, replace your stitch marker. Right, so that's my first single. So now we need to do another 3. So 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to do your increase. So that was 4, sorry, including the first one. Now you're going to do your increase, and then you're going to continue that pattern all the way around. So 4 singles and then an increase. So I've just got to the end of round 31, and I'm just going to do my increase, and then what we're going to do is remove the stitch marker, do your first single of the next round, and then replace the stitch marker. And this is actually just a straight round of 36 now. Right, so I'm just getting to the end of round 32 with my last single crochet, that straight round of 36. And the next one is 5 single crochets and then an increase, and it's on repeat. So 5 singles and then another increase. And so I'm just at the end of round 33. I'm just doing my last increase. And then we have got 2 straight rounds of 42. So what we're going to do is round 34 is 42 singles all the way round. Round 35 is 42 singles all the way round. So I'm just coming to the end of round 35. This should be your second straight row of 42 single crochets. And we have got another increase round. So I'm going to remove my stitch marker. Then I'm going to do 6 single crochets. And then I've got an increase. And this is the pattern all the way around. So it's 6 singles and then an increase, 6 singles and then an increase. So I'm just getting to the end of round 36, and I'm finishing with an increase. And then round 37 and round 38 are just 48 single crochets all around. And so we're just at the end of round 38. And we're going to go on to round 39. Now round 39 is a decrease round. So we are going to do 6 single crochets and then a decrease. And it's a repeat. So it's 6 singles and then a decrease, 6 singles and then a decrease. And so I'm just at the end of round 39 and I'm going to do my final decrease. And then we're going to do something a little bit different. So what we're going to do now is take the stitch marker out. And we're going to pop it through the loop that's on the hook, and we're going to attach the nose. So the nose needs to be attached between rounds 32 and 39. So here's our nose. What I might do, as I've knotted this, and I might even, yeah, let's do that as well. I am going to tie these two bits together, and then I'm going to cut them so that I don't have all of these loose ends, because I want this one, I'll show you why in a minute, and I want this one to sew, but these two in the middle I do not need, so I'm going to cut them off. I don't know where my good scissors have gone, so I'm using these really rubbish craft ones, but they'll do. There you go. And then we want this part of the nose to be at the top, so like this. My nose doesn't look very good here because it's come out flowery, which was not what I intended, but it's okay. It will do, won't it? So this needs to be attached between rounds 32 and 39. So this is 39 is the one we've just done. So the top of the nose can be right at the top of 39. Although I might actually take it down slightly and just do it. Yeah, I'm going to take it down to 38 actually. So I'm not going to do 39, I'm going to do 38. And I'm going to attach it just there so that it's in the middle and it looks gorgeous. And then I'm just going to weave it in and out of the head. Take that bit out of there. And then we're going to go in here and through there. But I'm just literally weaving in and out of all the stitches, and then I will go back around in case there's any gaps, because we don't want any gaps. I just sort of want to make sure it's sort of in the middle. It is, so I'm happy with that. We do need to give it a little bit of a stuff in a minute because it's very flat to the face at the moment, which I don't really mind, but it would be good if it had a little bit of stuffing in it. Right, so then what I'm going to do is, I've left a little hole here, look, I'm going to stuff, and then once I've stuffed I'm going to decide whether I need to go back round, but I probably will just for the safety of it. So put a little bit of stuffing in there. It's up to you how much you put in there. I just don't want it to have a flat nose, so I'm going to put a little bit more in. I think that looks all right. And then we're going to keep attaching to the head. Try not to get the stuffing involved because it will try and tangle itself in the yarn. It is quite secure, but I might just go back round just because then it'll be extra secure and it'll be a lot quicker this time. Right, and then we're going to put that behind there. And what we're going to do with this bit here is we're going to try and spread the cheeks out a little bit. And you probably won't have a clue what I'm talking about. But we're going to pull this bit of yarn here down through here. And we're just going to give it a little pull to see if we can just do that. But what it needs is something else to keep it tight. So I'm going to move this piece of yarn under the nose to tie with it. You'll see what I mean. Then I'm going to turn it back round. What I'm going to do is, was it this one? Yeah, this one. I'm going to give that a real big pull and I'm going to tie it to that one. And you might think, what's the point in that? But if you ever noticed, rabbits have this sort of like their nose is sort of a bit funny shaped. And it doesn't do too much, but it does make a little bit of a difference. So I'm happy with that. So now we're going to do a straight row of 42. And then I'll meet you when we get to the end of row 40. And so I'm just coming to the end of round 40. So now we've just completed round 40. Our next row is round 41. And round 41 we are going to do 5 single crochets followed by a decrease, and it's a repeat all the way around. So I'm just at the end of round 41, just doing my final decrease, and then we're going to pop the eyes in. put your stitch marker through the loop on the hook, and then let's look at eyes. So we want to position them between rounds 39 and 40. So we've just done 41, so that's 40, so that's 39. So we could do it like, yeah, let's go there. And then what, over here? Too far. That just looked funny. And now that one looks too close, so why don't we move this one across one? What do you reckon? I think that looks quite cute. Yeah, let's go with that. And then I'm going to pop the backs on. So there we have the nose or the mouth and the eyes. Now we are on round 42. Let's go. So we're going to take the stitch marker out, and this time it's 4 single crochets and then a decrease, and that's on repeat. Right, so I'm just coming to the end of round 42 and I'm doing my final decrease. The next row is also a decrease round. So the next time we're going to do 3 singles and then a decrease all the way around. I'm just coming to the end of round 43 and we're on a decrease. And then we'll be on round 44. Now round 44 is 2 single crochets and then a decrease. And now what we're going to do is remove the stitch marker and we're going to place it in the loop on the hook. So yeah, let's start stuffing the head with some stuffing. I might need a bit more than that. Remember, you will be able to do a last little bit of stuffing at the end, so don't worry too much. Right, I'm going to stop here and I'm going to go on to the next round because I can do any final little bits of stuffing in a minute, and I don't want the stuffing to get entwined with the stitches. So round 45, we are going to do this is going to be a little bit, you will have to follow along with this. So we're going to do a single crochet, and we're going to put the stitch marker in. We need to do a single through both the ear and the head. So go through the ear like that, and then we're going to go through the stitch on the head as well like that. This is a single. Try and tighten this as much as you can, but I do know it's not very easy. And then the next part is a bit harder, so we need to do a decrease next, or a deck. So we're going to go through the front loop on the ear, through the next loop on the ear, and then we're also going to go through the front loop of the first next stitch and the front loop of the second next stitch on the head, and then we're going to pull the yarn through all of them, and then we're going to single crochet. So that is a decrease, and then it's a single again. So we're going to go through that stitch. This is a nice easy bit now. Through that stitch, and we're going to go through that stitch there, put that bit inside so it gets hidden in the head, and then we're going to single through both layers. So that's our single. Now what we need to do is a decrease. Good job, this bunny's flexible, isn't it? A decrease, and then followed by a single, followed by another decrease, so now we're going to do the single through the ear and through the head. So that's our single there. Then we're going to do the decrease through the ear first, so the decrease like this, through the front loop, through the second loop, and then through the front stitch loop of the stitch and through the next front loop of the next stitch, and then we're going to yarn over and pull it through all 4 loops. Then we're going to finish off our single crochet, and then we are going to do a single there, and on the next stitch on the head, which is there. It's quite tight, this is, I do apologise, but it does look so cute when it's done. And then once we've done that, get off you silly, we've got a decrease, a single and a decrease, which will get us back to the start of the round, which I didn't mark, but oops. So we need to do a single, and then a decrease, followed by another single in there, and a decrease. And that is the end of the round. Doesn't she look so cute? Right, next, let's get rid of that for a second. Now is the time to stuff it a little bit more. So I'm going to stuff Buttercup's head just a little bit more, because she's a bit, I can just misshapen her a bit too easily, so which means she just needs a bit more stuffing. Right, now we're going to do 6 decreases. Let's do 6 decreases. So I've got 1 in here. So that's 1. I'm not going to put my stitch marker in this time. Take your hook out, pop your stitch marker in, because we're going to be doing something a little bit different. We're going to thread our needle. Then I'm going to leave that stitch marker in place for now. Don't even need that. Going to leave that in place just because then we know the last loop that we have to thread through. Oh, sorry, I realised I went off camera then. I'm literally just weaving in and out of the final stitches, so it's not too hard. Right, now I'm going to pop my needle through there and then remove the stitch marker. Just tighten. There you go, all nice and tight. And then you can tie yourself a little knot, like so, and then I'm going to poke it back through the head, and I'm going to just come out of the head somewhere, and then I'll put it back in and I'll go back out the body, because obviously the needle's not long enough to go all the way down. So come out there. I'll probably stop there, to be honest, because I think that's enough. And that is little Buttercup is finished. If you want to turn her into a beautiful little Easter bunny, she needs an Easter egg. So should we make an Easter egg? For Buttercup's Easter egg, I'm actually going to do it in the Baby Blossom Pretty Primrose. So what we need to do to start with is we need to make a magic ring. So lay the yarn over your fingers, wrap it around, flip, cross, go under the first, over the second, pull, twist, yarn over, pull through, and that's your magic ring. There's loads of magic rings in this video, sorry about that. And then we've got 6 single crochets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. And then I'm going to pull the magic ring closed, and I'm going to do 6 increases. So pull tighter like that. And then we've got the next round, so round 3 is a repeat, so it's just a single and then an increase, a single and then an increase. And so we're just at the end of round 3 and we're doing an increase. Round 4 is 2 singles and then an increase all the way around. Now round 5 is 3 singles and then an increase, and that's the same all the way around. And then we've got round 6, 7, 8, 9 and 10, so that's 5 rounds, just a straight 30 singles all the way around. So I'm just coming up to the end of round 10, so the last 5 rounds have all been straight 30 single crochet rows, and now we are on a decrease. So the way it goes is decrease and then 3 singles and then a decrease and then 3 singles all the way around. And then round 12 and 13 are a straight 24 single crochet rounds. Round 14 is a decrease round, so we're going to start off with the decrease and then we're going to do 2 single crochets, and it's the same all the way around. So it goes decrease, 2 singles, decrease, 2 singles, and then we're on to round 15, and round 15 is just 18 single crochets all around. And now we are on to another decrease. This time it's a decrease followed by a single, followed by a decrease, followed by a single, and it just repeats all the way around. And then round 17 is just a straight 12 single crochets. And so I'm just at the end of round 17. I'm doing my final single crochet, and then I'm going to remove the stitch marker and I'm going to pop it on the loop that's on the hook, because now we are going to stuff the egg. So let's get stuffing. Well, I'm quite happy with that amount of stuffing. Give it a little roll, and then take your stitch marker off, pop your hook back in, and this time we are going to do a single crochet and then a decrease, and a single and then a decrease, and we're just going to do that on repeat, single decrease till we get to the end of the round. So that's our decrease done, and now I'm going to take the stitch marker out and I'm going to pop it in the loop just for a second. I'm going to cut an end off. I just cut the end off, and now I'm going to weave in the ends, get rid of that stuffing out the way. Got a bit too much out that time, I think, but we are very almost done. So we're just going to weave in the ends by going in, out, in, out, in, out. And then I'm going to go through the loop that the stitch marker has currently got hold of. I'm going to remove the stitch marker, and then I'm going to just pull, and it'll be like a drawstring. It'll just close the top up like that. And then I'm going to tie a little knot just to keep it fastened securely, and then I'm going to weave this end back in through the egg. Can just reshape it if it goes a little bit out of shape, so do not worry. But that is the Easter egg done, and now you can either just have it separate, or you can sew it so that the Easter bunny is carrying the egg, like I did with Primrose. Let me show you. So Primrose is currently holding the egg, and I am going to do that with Buttercup as well. So Buttercup will be holding the egg next, like so. Isn't it cute? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go in the back of the arm. Hopefully you'll be able to see what I'm doing. I'm going to go in here, look, and I'm going to go through to the other side if it lets me. It's quite tough with all that stuffing in, but anyway, I'm going to go through to the other side like that. Then I'm going to sit her back up. Well, she doesn't want to sit up, but you know, she's going to sit up because I need her to sit up. Will that help? Not really, but anyway. Right, so she's going to sit up like this, and then I'm going to go through the egg. You can attach this any way you like. This is just a way that I like to do it, okay? I might actually just pull that right through the arm because it doesn't want to go in the egg yet. But what I'm basically trying to do is I'm trying to do it so that when she's holding it, you can't see this yarn that's coming through. So it's going to go through there. It's going to go straight out the other side. Like that. And then I'm going to get it to do the same through here. So I'm going to go in there and out the other side. And this is where I'm going to slightly do something slightly different, but it is only slightly. I'm going to just go round that post, so this post, so no one will see it. And then I'm going to go back through that hole, like that. And then I'm going to go back through the egg. Going to give her arm a little tug so that the egg comes back, that's it. And then I'm going to go back through the same hole, and then I'll go back through the same hole here as well, if I can. Come on. I'm squishing my egg here as well, starting to look a bit, I don't know, like a very long egg. I don't want all that stuffing to come out, that's what I'm trying to avoid. There you go, that'll do, right. And then we're going to pull that through. It looks a mess at the moment, I do know it looks a mess at the moment, do not worry. Right, so then when she sits up, if we pull this and this, you now cannot see the egg attached to that arm, except a little bit of a pull there where I pulled a little bit too hard, so don't do that. I'm going to go through that hole. I'm going to go through the post on this side this time. So instead of on this side, I'm going to go through a different post on this side. No one will see it, so it doesn't matter. But I'm going to come out the same hole here because I want it to be a bit hidden. There you go, like that. So now look, she's holding the egg. It's a bit out of shape. Just give it a squash and it'll go back fine. And then I'm going to tie these two, and I'm just going to hide the ends, and then no one will know the difference. Let's snip some ends off because it's quite long. Now I'm just going to give this a little tie off, and then I'm going to thread the needle again There we go. And then I'm going to go in this hole here, and I'm just going to take my ends up the arm and then come out up here. So I'm just literally hiding the end. That knot, just pull it through and it'll be fine. And then snip. And you have a beautiful buttercup holding a little Easter egg. Right, I'm going to take a better picture so you can see, and I will insert it now.